You know, if you look in just about any medicine cabinet, you're going to find a bottle of Tylenol or acetaminophen. It's got to be one of the most common drugs on the planet. But what happens when someone takes way too much? Well, it turns out there is a very specific and absolutely crucial antidote for that.
So what is this stuff? What's this lifesaver that emergency rooms rely on to fight one of the most common poisonings out there? Well, today we're going to break down exactly what it is, how it works, and why it's such a big deal.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about the danger itself. Then we'll introduce the antidote, our hero molecule. After that, we'll dive into the cool science of how it actually protects your liver. Then we'll cover the really critical part, the timing. And finally, we'll touch on a few other key things you should probably know. Okay, so let's start with this hidden risk. The very thing that makes acetaminophen so useful, the fact that it's everywhere, is also what makes an overdose such a common and honestly a pretty serious danger.
See, when you take way too much acetaminophen, it just completely overwhelms your liver's ability to process it safely. This overload creates a toxic byproduct that can cause really severe and sometimes even fatal damage. The medical term for this is hepatotoxicity, basically a fancy word for drug-induced liver damage. And believe me, it is a serious medical emergency.
But here's where the hero of our story enters the scene. Let's introduce the specific antidote that medical professionals turn to when they're staring down this exact situation.
It's a mouthful, N-Acetylcysteine. But in the real world, everyone just calls it NAC for short. And in emergency medicine, this is it. This is the gold standard, the go-to treatment for stopping that catastrophic liver damage before it happens.
And what's super interesting about NAC is that it kind of has this secret double life. Yeah, it's a critical antidote for poisoning, but it's also used as what's called a mucolytic agent. That's just a fancy way of saying it helps break up thick mucus in the lungs for people with conditions like cystic fibrosis or bronchitis. So one molecule, two totally different life-saving jobs. Pretty cool, right?
So how in the world does NAC pull off this incredible rescue mission inside the body? Let's get into the actual science of how it saves the liver from total destruction. Honestly, this is the perfect way to picture it. Your liver has this natural protector called glutathione. Think of it like a dedicated, hardworking cleanup crew that goes around neutralizing all the toxic stuff. But a massive Tylenol overdose just wipes this crew out. It's gone. The liver is left completely defenseless. NAC's job? It swoops in like reinforcements to rebuild that crew before it's too late.
Yeah, this slide really breaks it down perfectly. You can see it in 3 steps. First, the overdose is like a fire that just burns through all the liver's natural defenses, the glutathione. Then, NAC shows up like a supply truck, giving the liver the exact raw materials it needs to build that cleanup crew back up. And in that final stage, with its defenses back online, the liver can get back to its job, neutralizing the toxins and hopefully avoiding any permanent damage.
Okay, but here's the catch, and it is a huge one. While NAC is an incredible antidote, its success depends almost entirely on one thing: time. This is a true, no-kidding race against the clock.
Just look at this timeline. It tells you everything you need to know. If a patient gets NAC within 8 hours of the overdose, the chances of preventing serious liver damage are excellent. But look what happens after that 8-hour mark. The benefit just starts to drop off, and it drops off fast. By the time you get to 24 hours, the damage is pretty much done. The window is closed and there's very little NAC can do.
So how do doctors actually get this stuff into a patient? Well, there are 2 main ways. You can drink it or you can get it through an IV. Now don't worry about the specific numbers here. Just look at the total time. The oral route takes a full 72 hours. That's 3 days. The IV, on the other hand, is done in just 21 hours. That speed is a huge advantage, which is why the IV is often the way to go, especially when the clock is ticking.
Okay, last but not least, let's get into a bit of the fine print, the essential safety info, and other important things that doctors and nurses have to manage when they're using this powerful antidote.
Now, of course, a medicine this powerful isn't going to be without some potential side effects. The biggest ones, especially with the oral dose, are nausea and vomiting. You might also see things like flushing, swelling, or changes in heart rate and blood pressure. This is all stuff the medical team is watching for like a hawk while the treatment is going on. And this is super important. It's not for everybody. There are 2 key situations where it's a definite no-go. If a patient is allergic to NAC itself, or if they're in the middle of a severe asthma attack, because the drug could actually make their breathing worse. And then there are a few other really key things to keep in mind.
For one, and this is critical, NAC is considered safe in pregnancy and should absolutely not be withheld from a pregnant patient who needs it. Also, right at the beginning, activated charcoal might be used to try and soak up any drugs still in the stomach, and you can bet that for these complex cases, consulting a toxicologist or a poison control center is standard procedure.
And that's a wrap. But it really gets you thinking, doesn't it? The science behind something as simple as a painkiller reveals this whole hidden world of complex biology where this one specific antidote stands ready to jump in. It kind of leaves you wondering, what other incredible scientific stories are hiding in plain sight, right there in your own home?